Dean Smith, next week, Wednesday, it's D-Day for the same-sex marriage debate. Conservative critics of the bill that you've developed say it doesn't provide sufficient religious protections. What's your response?
Well, as an old-fashioned parliamentarian, I would welcome any and every commentary on the bill that, yes, I have authored, but has already been publicly endorsed by Liberal colleagues Tim Wilson, Trent Zimmerman, Trevor Evans and Warren Entsch. We should be open to having a debate about this. But I would say from the outset that the bill that I've authored is a strong bill. It's built off the back of a very comprehensive Senate committee report, built off the back of a Senate committee inquiry. It's been in the domain now for a few months. The Senate committee report has been in the public domain now for almost 12 months. So public debate on this is necessary, it's important, but when you compare my bill to the other 20-odd bills that have been before the Parliament over recent years, even when you compare it to international bills, it's a good, strong bill when it comes to protecting religious views about marriage.
Now, fellow West Australian Liberal Ian Goodenough says it's more of a wedding ceremony protection bill.
Well, in the first instance, I would invite people, if they haven't already, to read the Senate committee report, but more particularly to read the Senate Hansard. That is, the contributions of those 40-plus witnesses that came before the Senate committee. This idea of a wedding-specific bill is something that was put to the committee by religious leaders themselves. This is a marriage bill. This is not a free speech bill. This is not a parenting bill. So I think that that's actually not a very necessary or worthy criticism.
Yeah. Now, the bill does have its supporters, and I suppose we're jumping the gun here because we haven't even seen the results. But let's proceed on the basis that that the yes vote does get the majority. Labor says that it won't seek to amend your bill, and Simon Birmingham, one of the Prime Minister's key lieutenants, he says that your bill is the logical starting point for this process. Does that make your bill effectively the de facto government bill?
Well, you know, Andrew, I approach my politics conservatively. I don't want to be presumptuous about what the outcome might be on the 15th of November. But it makes sense for my bill to be the starting bill. Yes, it already enjoys, I think, cross-party support. It enjoys the support of some Liberals already. It's a bill that I argue will be substantively the bill that ends up being the marriage bill in Australia. But again, if there are ideas, if there are improvements to the bill, people should put their names to them and put the detail of those amendments to the Parliament, perhaps even put the detail of those amendments to the public before next Wednesday.
Well, it sounds like a dozen or so Conservative Liberals have actually developed their own bill. Are you challenging them to release their bill?
We would love to see the bill. Everyone would love to see the bill because it looks like Australians have upheld their end of the bargain. Almost 80% of people participated in the survey. That is a big tick for Australians saying we have upheld our end of the bargain. The other side of the bargain is for Parliament and for individual parliamentarians to act in a considered way but expeditiously to give effect to that. Tactics of delay and disruption will be frowned upon, not by me, not by Labor or the Greens, but by the Australian community.
OK, well, let's anticipate a majority yes vote for the sake of this question. You could give notice as early as Monday that you plan to bring your bill for debate on Wednesday, which is when we hear the result. Will you do that?
Well, people can be confident there is a bill. There is a bill. I will be watching closely what the Prime Minister has to say over coming days in terms of how he adds a little more detail to the government's commitment to facilitate a process to give effect to a yes outcome, if that's what it is that the Australian people have decided upon. I'll be closely watching his commentary first, but there is a bill. If there is a yes vote, I will be moving it in the Parliament.
And when will you move that bill?
And I will move that bill as soon as practically possible after a yes vote is known.
Could it be next week?
It could be next week, most definitely. But marriage will most definitely be done in this country, if there is a yes vote, by Christmas.
Okay, but let's talk about next week, because it is a Senate only.
Yes.
There will be your colleagues who want it to be discussed by the party room first. You think it should be discussed immediately in the Senate?
Well, this is why we pay a close attention to what the Prime Minister has outlined. He has said that the government will facilitate a private member's bill. That is true. It could be any private member's bill. But the definition of a private senator's private member's bill is that it doesn't need or require the government's endorsement. It is a bill that any person, any senator, can bring before the Parliament, any member can bring before the House of Representatives. In fact, I co-sponsored a private senator's bill previously, the 18C Reform Bill with Senators Lyon, Helm and Bernardi. That was not necessary to go to the party room.
What do you make of the tactics from the Conservative wing?
I think it would be prudent to exercise some caution. It's true that there is, I believe, some legitimate issues around freedom of religion in our country, but freedom of all religions, and they do need to be examined in a very careful and considered way. And the Parliament and the parliamentary processes are the best way to do that. But that is not reason for delay, that is not reason for disruption. I think delaying the outcome of yes, a legislative outcome of yes, will be frowned upon by the Australian community. Parliamentarians, irrespective of their political persuasion, will pay a very high price for that.
And what do you make of the conduct of the campaign? We've had a remarkable turnout. It looks like more than 80% of Australians will have voted.
It has been remarkable. It's been remarkable. My views about the postal survey are well known. I am particularly
Which is
proud,
that you didn't want it.
I didn't want it. But if there are two virtues, I think it's been a necessary evil. But there are two virtues. The first virtue is I'm very, very proud of the fact that the Yes campaign has stayed on the issue, has stayed wholly and solely on bringing human stories to the fore, telling how marriage reform is good for people, is good for families, is good for personal stories. I also accept that a strong participation rate means that the community does have ownership of the result. And Parliament will have to pay very, very close attention to that, whatever that result is. So there have been two virtues in what I think has been a necessary evil.
Now, before you go, I must ask about next week for another reason. It could be another big week for you, because you've actually forwarded your candidacy for the Senate presidency role. What would you bring to the job?
Well, these are conversations for me to have with my fellow Liberal Senate colleagues, and yes, there'll be a ballot on Monday morning. I am a constitutional conservative. In deciding to be a parliamentarian, I consciously chose that I would like to be a senator. I think Australians are craving for the credibility, their personal faith in institutions to be restored. I enjoy being a parliamentarian. I take a traditional parliamentary approach to my role. I think qualities of tenacity, courtesy, thoroughness, decency, but also upholding conviction in difficult times. I hope that colleagues will view those favourably when thinking about a future president.
Well, Dean Smith, whatever next week brings, farewell.
Thank you.